So I was intrigued to find quite a lot of debate in my comments about whether or not whales are fish. And the short answer is no, whales are mammals and therefore not fish. However, quite a lot of people in my comments arguing that whales are fish are not entirely wrong for a very particular, weird, annoying reason. In fact, in a past video, I've said this.
Well, there's also not such a thing as trees or fish. What do you mean?
No. That's a video for another time.
So in what sense are whales fish, or maybe do fish not really exist at all? Let me just give you the tiniest little bit of background, and then I think you'll see where the problem is coming from. Two of the main big groups of fish are fish with bones, called osteichthyes, and then cartilaginous fish with no bones, called chondrichthyes. And within bony fish, there are two groups. There are the ray-finned fish, called actinopterygians, and there are lobe-finned fish, called sarcopterygians. Those two groups diverged from each other over 400 million years ago, and one of the defining differences was what their fins looked like. Actinopterygians have fins that look like rays, I guess, and sarcopterygians have fins that look like lobes, I guess. Things get interesting, though, because one subset lineage of early lobe-finned fish, the sarcopterygians, would evolve and change such that their lobes began to look more like limbs, which is part of what allowed them to come out of the water onto land. And then a subset lineage of those early sarcopterygians would go on to, over the next hundreds of millions of years, evolve and diversify to eventually include all amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So maybe you already see the problem, but here's where it really becomes clear. In biology, a sort of legitimate, unified, whole group of organisms that gets its own scientific name as a group is one that is defined by a single common ancestor and all of its descendants. In other words, you could make one snip off of the entire tree of life, and the chunk that you removed that has a stem branch and all of the smaller splitting branches coming off of it is one group. And groups like this are called monophyletic groups. And here's the kicker. Sarcopterygians that have the common name lobe-finned fish is a monophyletic group that doesn't include everything that we refer to as a fish, but it does have everything from coelacanths to lungfish to Komodo dragons, to whales, to people. So does that make whales and humans fish? I don't think so, because fish doesn't refer to that kind of group. There is no monophyletic group of organisms that has the official scientific name fish. Fish is a colloquial term that refers to a bunch of different kinds of animals that turn out not to be more closely related to each other than some of them might be to other animals that aren't fish. But it still is useful for us to have a term that points to a bunch of different, not super closely related animals that all look vaguely similar or have important surface level features in common. A fish is more or less an aquatic, vertebrate, egg-laying animal with fins and gills to swim and breathe underwater. Now, the problem seems to be that there is no single group of animals that contains all and only the animals with those characteristics, which seems to imply that either fish aren't really a thing, or that some animals which very clearly seem to be not fish are in fact fish. But this problem only arises if we insist that a colloquial term like fish ought to correspond to a biological monophyletic group. But why? Fish doesn't need to have a hyper-specific scientific official definition that fits the criteria for monophyly or something. It's okay for fish to just mean what everyone means by fish. A slightly more abstract point would be to say that we can divvy up a set of things into any number of possible different groups. And it's okay to group things differently in different contexts where it's useful to have them grouped differently. So if we're evolutionary biologists or taxonomists, it makes sense to make a group called Sarcopterygians that includes everything from coelacanths to humans. And then, in order to contrast that group with its evolutionary sister group, the Actinopterygians, we'll sometimes refer to the first as lobe-finned fish and the second as ray-finned fish. Or, if we're just people going about our daily business, asking questions like, what's the biggest fish? Then it makes sense to group together Agnatha and Chondrichthyes and Actinopterygians and some Sarcopterygians and throw all of those things together under the heading fish. And the fact that the categories that the taxonomist made and that the common person made overlap but are not the same is not a problem. It just means that you need to be clear about which one you're using. So the final concrete conclusion is this. No, whales are not fish, for the same reason that dinosaurs are not fish and that you are not a fish. And if somebody asks the question, what's the biggest fish? And you reply, the blue whale, I understand what you're getting at, and I understand that you understand some fun taxonomy, but you're not answering the question that that person is really asking. So no, whales are not fish, whales are mammals, and the largest living fish, the largest extant fish, is the whale shark.